Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from Trust TV here in Abuja. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. My name is Suleiman. As the war between Russia and Ukraine enters its second week, the international price of crude oil is rising. Yesterday, oil prices reached between $130 to $140 for the first time since 2008. The sharp rise comes on the heels of comments by US President Joe Biden that his government is considering ways in which to ban imports of Russian oil. Russia, of course, is the third largest producer of oil after Saudi and the United States itself. And of course, the US is the world's largest both producer and importer. So with the steep climb in the international prices of crude oil, many Nigerians would expect the country to be smiling to the bank. However, with the Nigerian oil industry, the more you look, the less you see. So it appears that the more crude oil we sell, the less money we are going to get from it. Because many problems account for this. First, the dollar, the fact that we don't refine it locally, and so many other issues. So tonight, we ask, why would Nigeria get money for selling crude oil and yet have almost nothing to show for it? What is happening to the politics of subsidy? And as President Muhammad Buhari once said, NNPC that is subsidizing Nigerians, or is it Nigerians that is subsidizing NNPC and those who work there? With me to go over all of these issues are two Nigerians who are capable of dealing with it. Dr. Kasmir Mfanyi is a consultant, a researcher, and public affairs analyst. Also with me is Sunday Michael Ogu is business editor, Daily Trust. You are welcome to Daily Politics, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Thank you. But before we go on, we'll just take a minute of a break. When we return, we'll bring the details of this discussion. Stay with us.
The idea was to give the interim government confidence that there is somebody, a military man, who is well known, who can be accepted.
You alluded to the case of your son, Umar Farouk. Are you in touch with him?
Yes. He phones us 2 times, sometimes 3 times in a month.
As always, when I'm talking about late Abiola, I still thank my God for directing me on things to do when he gave me that leadership of this country.
Many of you honest Fulanis, you allow this man to cast aspersion on you.
You know, Zamfara is the mother of all bandits.
The biggest problem, if you permit me, is the fact that we have not been able to get the totality of our citizenry.
It's very, very difficult to have a fixed mind like that this one you will hand over to this person because you think you will do better.
I don't see myself under no circumstance ever leaving APC for another political party? Here on the Mambila Plateau. And this is where the hydroelectric power dam is supposed to be constructed.
Most people in Nigeria are ignorant of the fact that employing a child as a maid is in fact against the law.
Access to the textile mill has been very difficult.
I believe, or I think, that if you want to make money, it should be in a place where there are not plenty of people that can do what you do.
From the way things are happening now, I don't think the two parties will make an impact.
I've been talking about the updates concerning the campaign of Nigerian Super Eagles in Abuja.
Bola Tinubu has informed President Muhammadu Buhari of his ambition to contest for the position of president.
To be self-reliant, a blind man defies all odds to become a carpenter in Gombe State.
The country is now experiencing a fourth wave of the COVID-19 pandemic with the emergence of the Omicron variant.
Talks are ongoing between NRC management and the union.
Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV, and we are discussing the politics of fuel subsidy amid rising fuel prices. And just before we continue, we want to apologize for that long break we were having technical hitches, but we're now fine. And thank you for staying with us. So, Dr. Kasmir, as we were saying while the break was on, what exactly is going on? Why is it that we are afraid that fuel price, international price of crude is rising? Why are we even afraid? You know, we're supposed to be happy that we'll be making more money. Why are we afraid instead?
Well, we're afraid because the impact of crude oil prices naturally would always have, you know, a socio-political impact on global communities. And the impact is into two flanks. The first is the impact it has on a producing nation. And then the other flip is the impact it used to have or it should have on a consuming nation. And when you have a country like we are, naturally endowed with oil and gas, we should therefore be dubbed a producing nation. However, we are at the mercy of the factors that impact consuming nation because we have refused over the years since the first draw of oil from Olobi to develop the oil sector in Nigeria. The oil sector in Nigeria, the level of its development can only be compared to what's happening in Venezuela. And the truth is that the impact of oil price, again, beyond producer-consumer nation flank, is also sharply divided into developed and emerging economies. So, in the current situation, whereas we should be gloating in the euphoria of a rise in oil price, the worries we express is because we do not have, we're not fully resourced as a nation to make the most value added, because the gains in increase in oil is actually if we have the infrastructure to add value to crude, not on crude as it is. Now, of course, countries like Saudi will be home and dry with the current increase in price. You will see now that OPEC political factors will come to play, where they will be looking at how do they mitigate the political risk associated with OPEC member states.
We will certainly come back to the politics at that OPEC level very shortly, because they are talking about increasing output and all of that. But maybe in the meantime, Mr. Michael, you deal with these issues on a daily basis. So what are those things that he was talking about, worries that we have as a nation, both as a producer nation and as a consumer nation? Is there, because any nation has to be, even if you are not producing, you have to consume, right? So if you are producing, you still have to be consumer and producer at the same time. So why is that a problem for us now?
It's a problem for us on many fronts. Even if we were merely just producing and we weren't consuming, we are not optimizing production. It's always on paper when they go in for budgets to tell you their estimate is to hit 2.2 million barrels, and we struggle to do 1.6 million barrels per day. With the obsolete equipment we have, and the entire process is riddled with corruptions. There is no measurement or metering at the wellhead. There is no metering on the channels. Metering only happens at the point where they have been taken out of this country, and all of the theft happens between the oil head and the transporting facilities down to the port side. That is on the part of production. On the part of adding value, what has helped? Yes, which Dr. mentioned. With countries like Saudi Arabia, the local market is inoculated from all of the politics of the international market because they produce more than enough for what the local market needs. And they produce all the other stratas of crude oil.
When you say produce, you mean produce refined products? Refined products. In addition to the crude?
In addition to the crude. And all other things that go with it, whether you are talking about petrochemicals, or you are talking about pesticide or herbicide, or these are all value added. That come from petroleum that we are not doing at the moment because we basically just take the God-given crude oil and ship them out of the country. So we lose out on all of those and have to then rely on what goes on internationally to fix prices back home. Because you have to go back there and expose yourself to the vagaries of what is going on to fix prices back home with an economy that is battling to stabilize the exchange rate between Naira and the dollar. First of all, that is battling to raise sufficient income to pay salaries at the state level, an economy that is struggling to balance its trade because we are barely not exporting. And so for us to fund the import of machineries and spare parts, we need dollar bills from the sales of crude oils to do this thing. And so if you have to then spend that essential dollar
But that's part of the argument that some people are making, about how this whole thing is actually a burden on Nigeria at this point now. That the dollar bills that Mr. Sunday Michael is talking about are also the ones that you need to buy the refined products that you don't produce at the same time. And these are the ones that you gained from the sale of crude.
Yeah.
So is Nigerian crude oil actually free?
Thank you very much. You see, we have this school of thought that considered crude deposits in developing and emerging countries as a curse, not blessing.
Interesting.
Now, for instance, is there any logical explanation as to why we are not taking our full OPEC quota daily? Can you provide an explanation other than corruption and internal conflict, probably? Now, that is, go dig out crude as is, meet a quota. We are unable to meet the quota. Now, it's another kettle of fish that we cannot process crude in Nigeria. So long as we are unable to process crude in Nigeria, whenever there is a shift in oil prices, we will catch cold. We will go down on our knees. No matter the price they sell it. And let me tell you another flip side to it. Take it or not, we run an oil-dependent budget.
Absolutely.
So any country that continue to allow the oil prices to impact their national budget will always be at the mercy of crude oil prices, and the country will never settle when there's an increase. So it's a mix of bittersweet for Nigeria. Assuming the four obsolete refineries we have are working optimally, this would have been a windfall. But it can't be a windfall when we signed when we activated the PIA, Petroleum Industry Act, and the law provided that it should take effect in February. And when the president considered again the political implication of that decision, he tilted to favor the political interest than the economic argument. Now, that paved way for us to say we are putting off the effective date for most of the provisions in the PIA till the next 18 months. A major chunk of it is the issue of subsidy. Now, immediately the president said that those who are in charge of subsidy, who in the last 7 years first told us they were taking out subsidy, because there were times in this country we were told subsidy had been fully taken out. You are in the media, you can get the excerpts of
course.
them.
The president said who is subsidizing who?
That was before he came. When he had come in this particular his administration, he had told us subsidy had gone. Now, later they now brought a terminology that is strange, a lexicon, very new, very novel lexicon in oil conversation. Cost recovery.
Under recovery.
Cost under recovery. Now, when they could not stomach that, they returned to the real baptismal name of payment of subsidy. So when in February they said we're shifting it for the next 18 months, the people requested for, in the first tranche, 3 trillion naira to provide for subsidy, not for the entire year, almost for the first 6 months going from February. Now, that's not sustainable.
Because maybe by the time we get to the end of the year, it will probably be double that.
It will be double that number.
That's interesting. So, Mr. Michael, in that case, what can we expect going forward from this point? We have this situation where because what cost is external events that are causing the jump in the fuel price. And these external events don't depend on the situation in Nigeria, rather what's going on there. So if, for example, the US stop importing Russian fuel, there is going to, because Russia, pumps about 10 million barrels daily, to the global market. So once that, and the US is its largest customer, once that is banned and they want to work with other European countries to stop it, that will reduce sharply how much of oil that Russia is pumping out, and therefore the overall global output will be affected. So what can we expect with that? Should we expect a rise? Are we going to borrow more? What are those things that we can expect as effects of this?
As it is, even before that actual action, we are already catching cold, as Dr. Ifeanyi had rightly pointed out. Yes. Because some of the statistics suggest that we are comfortable with an international price of somewhere around $75 and $80. Yes. Anything above that becomes a problem. We begin, the panic buttons automatically goes off. So now $75, $80 today, we are talking about $140.
Almost double that.
Almost double that amount. So it's not rocket science that whatever they have provided for in the supplementary budget would not see us through. Because the projection they made were as at $75, $80. And so right now the circumstances have changed. They would have to shift the goalposts. So it's a complex situation for us. The only iota of hope would be how fast the Dangote refinery comes on stream. And that is not because it will exactly sell to us at a cheaper price, but maybe we can reduce other factors like the cost of shipping and the rest, because it is producing
and the cost of buying exchange rates.
Yes, because it is producing at a free trade zone, and basically it is selling to us as though it is coming from the outside, but it will knock off the cost of transport and all of that, freights that should have happened maybe between Belgium and Nigeria and all of that. And given that he's in Nigeria, he probably will be benevolent to say, okay, I will give you at a different price if there is some kind of crude swap arrangement as the NNPC.
That's still in the future, isn't it? Yeah. What happens to the NNPs? What happens to the 4 refineries? How can you have 4 refineries with people working there, government paying them salaries? And so what exactly is the politics of this subsidy as apart from the economics of it, which you both have explained before?
Let me tell you something. This is my personal opinion.
Yes.
And I
speak freely.
I want it controverted.
Interesting.
That there's no cartel. I think there's a cartel behind what is plaguing Nigeria in the oil sector. An international cartel with local collaborators. Those who would not want us bounce back to our in-country capacity for refining of petroleum products. Before President Obasanjo came on board, the LMA Petrochemical, and a subsidiary of the NNPC, their petrochemical chips were top-rated globally.
The same Nigerian element.
It's still there in element. For inexplicable reason, it was one of the things that were parted with in the name of privatization and sale of government assets. To very shrewd people, I think Indians acquired it.
So the President Yar'Adua reversed that.
That wasn't part of what was reversed. Okay. What he reversed was the sale of refineries, which were done at the twilight of the administration. Yeah. But this other one was done much earlier, and they had taken full control.
Interesting.
Now, I said we have a cartel, local and international, that have sworn that Nigeria will not have refinery. I'll give you an example to substantiate my position. I hope you know that there was also a time in this country, what we were doing was a swap, what they called crude swap.
I think that's what the government is even doing, even now,
so
as we speak. Yes.
We take crude to you,
and then you give us
and then just give us PMS. Oh my goodness. Who had bewitched Nigeria? You are waiting for when what is it called? Dangote refinery will come on stream to solve the immediate problem. We have an immediate problem that, you see, the problem with oil, let me tell you, the problem with oil is that once there's a problem with oil pricing, check it. It's directly linked to issues about international security.
Interesting.
We had a windfall during the Gulf War. We had a windfall when Libya was invaded. So it's always, it rides on the string, not that of supply and demand, but a lot more on international security.
Conflict. Very intelligent analysis.
If I am part of those advising President Muhammadu Buhari, the distance between where the refinery in Niger is and Katsina, the capital of Katsina State, is less than the distance between city center of Abuja and Gwagwalada.
Interesting.
So, can we explore, rather than take crude to Europe, to Brazil, can we take crude to Niger Republic? Can we have our people truck fuel instead of Lagos? Can we truck from Niger?
Interesting.
Can we evolve a supply chain that the 19 northern states be supplied from an oil deal we can strike with the Niger Republic refinery, which is a modern technology refinery?
This is an interesting new dimension to the whole discussion, you know. So, how, what, and I'm sure even our viewers will believe, because this is not an argument that is out there in public right now. Is an interesting new ideas perspective, you know, new idea. So, how would this affect, for example, the grueling scarcity of fuel that people are dealing with right now, domestically right now, even before we talk about things like exchange rates?
What would be a worry for me in what he has suggested would then be the capacity of the refinery
in Niger.
Would that be enough to give us the 100 million liters we need daily, for instance, as local consumption? And that also makes me want to part views a bit, you know, with the LMA example. Because the argument for me had always been, what do we have to show? The LMA petrochemical plant today, at some point, gave us a dividend of about $10 billion, which was huge windfall for us in this country. I was wondering if...
Was it at the time it was sold?
No, after it has seen through its free tax period, the first dividend we got from that place was that huge. And I was wondering if it had been in the management of the kind of people who had managed the refinery, whether we would have made that kind of money from that output. So as much as it felt like selling out a national asset that was lucrative, I thought somehow the shrewdness of those businessmen had kept that place working, which becomes something we want to tinker with regards to how those obsolete refineries are currently being managed. You talked about people who had been employed since the year 2000 and had risen through the ranks to become directors, but I've never watched one crude
come out of the same refineries that they manage, you know.
You know where they manage.
It's a contradiction.
I think that in looking at a solution, yes, looking up to Niger, it's one for whatever we can get to subsidize whatever we have locally. It will be cheaper than ordering dangerous and contaminated fuel from Belgium and all of that. But what would be more sustainable is to evolve a platform that would allow us recurrent profile in addition to whatever the Dangote is doing, and the local refineries will just be it. I mean, as obsolete, like you rightly mentioned, as they are, they have the capacity to do far much more than our daily demand. At any rate, the same NNPC told us that 40% of about 105 million liters of those fuel that are supposed to be for local consumption are smuggled out to. Essentially what we do is to subsidize the entire West African chain rather than just Nigeria. So it then means that properly managed, we are looking at around 60, 65, 70 daily million liters of truck. Then if you even standardize power supply, because a quantum of that also goes into powering these smaller machines that you'll be looking at.
Yeah, I think he raised another dimension, the privatization of the refineries, which have been also a lingering issue in the country over time. It was particularly a highlight of the 2019 presidential elections. But that's something we will discuss maybe when we return from a short break. Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. We'll be taking a short break now. When we return, we'll continue our discussions on the politics of fuel subsidy in the time of rising crude oil prices. Stay with us.
This is Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV, and we're discussing the politics of oil prices at a time in which global oil prices are actually rising, and which some people would expect that Nigeria and Nigerians should be gaining from. But as it appears, things are not the way they look. So, Dr. Kashmir, before we went on break, we were thinking about how the possibilities of selling off those refineries, or whether or not that would actually be a good thing, considering that the Dangote refinery, which also has been, is on the way coming, but it's going to be a huge one, 600 barrels refined in a day. It's a huge issue. So what do we do? If we had sold them off earlier, would that have been better? And can we do that now? And if we do, what are the gains of doing that?
Thank you. One is that I'm an anti-neocolonial theory.
Okay, that's interesting.
I do not believe that we should sell everything because we have refused to behave like human beings. I also have this persuasion that the private sector in Nigeria hasn't fared any better than the public sector. The issues that bedeviled the private sector, the public sector, has found its way into the private sector because you are dealing with the same stock of human beings. There's the need for a drastic paradigm shift.
Are you saying the Nigerians who are in the private sector are not different from Nigerians who are in the public sector?
Because if we continue with, it's not working because it's public, we sell. One day, we will put up Aso Villa.
For sale.
For sale.
Interesting.
Because it is not working.
And we may not even get a buyer.
We may. We are almost begging China to buy.
Interesting.
That's another conversation. Now, let me tell you why I have a problem with that. You see, energy security is on the same page with national security.
Interesting.
And that is why even pariah nations struggle to have their own energy system in place and under the control of their nationals. That is the truth. Even consumer countries like India have their energy system, particularly oil. They're in charge. Once they procure crude, the rest processes are in their hands, in the hands of their national, and fully controlled by their national government. America, that is espousing us the neocolonial theory of privatize everything, their energy sector, their energy security. That is why President Biden can say, we are going to cut this and cut that. Because it is not in the hands of private interests. It is a national matter. Now we have a problem. Let me tell you why.
Yes.
I said in one media platform that the Buhari I knew in 1983 when I was in primary 6, if it's the same Buhari and you bring in adulterated or non-standard fuel, non-specific fuel that do not conform to the specification used in country, I tell you, 1, 2, 3 people who were party to that would have been booted out of the system. So the president's inability as the Minister of Petroleum to wield the sledgehammer against those who have perpetrated this national sabotage is why we've not been able to get it right in the energy sector, particularly oil. And so it is not about selling or not selling. Assuming without conceding, if the man who bought your father's house said, I have made enough profit renting your father's house, take this one as royalty. If we got $10 billion as tax paid us, assuming if it had been our national company, well run, the only way to run it well, there's a story that made headline. If it was Nigerian Airways that the Emir of Kano was bridging flight, that flight will wait.
Certainly.
It will wait. So the problem we have is that there's a need for a national rebate.
Okay.
And nowhere it can only start in the corridors of power. So many persons plunged us into hardship, difficulties, and suffering that the president gave pats at the back. That is where the problem is.
Thank you. So, but his point is the issue is not private sector participation per se, because there is not much difference between two groups of Nigerians. The people, in fact, there's a revolving door between them. Those who move, when they retire, they go into the private sector, or
vice versa.
Or vice versa. The issue is governance, as he is putting it, which is what we are discussing on this program. So how does governance around these issues affect, in particular, this rising oil prices to the ongoing scarcity of oil? Are we going to see more of it or less of it? Because even as it is, people are quite already, stretched about it. And then it's also an energy security issue, like he said, because it's combined with power outage again. So is there a connection? And what's the way out if prices continue to rise?
There is a connection, and I think from the word go, let me slightly differ again from Prof.
No, that's fine. Difference is important
for several reasons. One of them is sometimes most times rather, the impression I get when we talk about privatization is the assumption that we are selling to people who are not Nigerians. And then when you talk about governance, this is where governance takes the front seat for me. Designing the laws, making the policies that ensure that the people who will be at the forefront of this are Nigerians. So you could have a privatization that specifies that foreign interest in this, we have that to the bank. Our core national banks are owned in country. To ensure that whilst you look forward to welcoming FDIs, foreign direct investment, it doesn't go beyond a certain threshold. And that always, as a going concern, XYZ amount, 50% plus one, will be owned and certified by Nigerians. So even if you put out a bid to own these things, they are cleared by the security agencies that those are not foreign financing masquerading through Nigerians, to ensure that the identities of these things are intact. That is, for me, it's where governance should take the lead role and allow people who would drive these things as businesses to drive them. We could imagine that, for instance, with Element, because it's a wonderful example, other than just the money that come in, with even what they are doing with CSR in their own community, as opposed to what we have seen with other companies. We could imagine that money could have been multiple folds, but it could also have been zero. So for me, the experience for us has always been, every time we delve into these things, because we run businesses with the same mindset that we have run governance, we have practically grounded them. And that is why I part slightly away from him when he made the comparison that the private sector is not any different. We have seen a private sector that has shown resilience in this country.
But the thing is, the private sectors in this country, you can have two types of them.
Yes.
There are those where the local capacity and expertise and experience, is quite high.
Yes.
And those ones are doing well.
Yes.
You can talk about things, for example, like Transcorp Hilton.
Yes.
You can't find any difference between when it was, except that it is even better. Things like banking.
Yes.
In these areas, private sector capacity is strong. But there are areas in which, particularly more technical areas where private sector capacity is lacking much. So maybe in those areas, there's a concern for national interest.
Yes, but just to add, if we get it right with policy, if we get it right with governance, then the technical partners that are supposed to partner the Nigerians to build up the enabling critical manpower would follow. I will give you a typical example with cement.
Okay.
the Obasanjo administration started the whole conversation about backward integration. It was followed up by the Yar'Adua administration and sustained by this administration.
But can we get back to the issue of oil?
I'm just trying to say, my example is to show...
That example is taken.
Yes,
can we go back to the topic?
So my example is to show that if we become consistent with policy and governance, that we can drive the necessary attention and interest both by Nigerians.
But that one is in the future. We're talking about now. What can Nigerians expect tomorrow, next tomorrow? Because there is speculation that oil prices can reach $200,
painfully,
which has never happened before. You know, that's unprecedented in time. If it does reach that point, are we going to suffer, or even as we move on towards that point, are we going to have more of oil scarcity, or what's going to happen?
We are going to see more of what is happening, if not aggravated, because we had barely moved away from managing the situation of contamination before these situations escalated. So we are going to struggle to find the dollars to bring in more fuel. We are going to struggle to manage the supply side difficulty that we are already in, because there is a fine balance between the state governments are already shouting. On the one hand, they wanted it to go because they wanted more money to come into their pockets to do what they need to do. So that will be reduced spending for them. And it's going to be a dicey situation. The governors are already shouting. The country is already worried. If we have earmarked 3 trillion and we are afraid that that may not be enough, it may jack up to 4 to 5 trillion. That means everything we have earmarked for capital expenditure may just end up
Which brings us to the issue of borrowing. Because the whole mathematics for the average Nigerian, for the common person, you know, for my grandmother in the village or my neighbor out there, the whole mathematics doesn't add up. How come we're selling crude and then we're having to borrow money because all the deficits is being financed by more borrowing, more and more borrowing? Even this, in fact, the president was open about this, that Nigerians, the only way they are going to be able to not remove subsidy is to keep with borrowing. So how can we be selling crude oil? We're not seeing crude oil, and then we are borrowing more money on top of that. That looks like double loss.
It's double loss because we are struggling to put something on nothing.
Yes.
You see, I like his argument about privatization a lot, but I hate it with a passion.
Can we discuss Nigeria?
Yes, with Nigeria.
Yes.
We have done a whole lot of it. And those service points, Nigerians are not getting value for their money. Value for even service. Communication, banking, power. We're not. All these are already in private hands. Very dicey. We'll keep that for another day.
Yes.
Now,
thank you.
If oil price, international crude oil price, goes beyond 140 today, like he said, we will be in a big soup, as he said in Nigerian parlance. But the question we need to answer, that's why I said privatization is not the solution. He said, and I agree, the statistic railed out there is that we consume 100 million liters per day. Before this government came, it was around 35, 40. What has happened? People sold more of their cars. People did not buy more cars. So why did it move from 40 to 100?
There's sharp practices somewhere. Is that what you're saying?
Meaning that it is the human factor that is our problem, not technical expertise. Are we going to also privatize custom, immigration, police to check our borders when we eventually privatize the oil? It will still come. Now, the truth is that I like what President Muhammad Buhari had done. Government cannot hands off the energy sector. It cannot, particularly this oil. So if it goes to 200, the question is, are Ghanaians, are they as stretched out as we are in the circumstance? They are not. Even Benin Republic, they are not. There are a few drastic structural measures that the government needs to put in place. One of the quick fix is to determine the true volume consumed in country. We do not need to borrow to have that done. So if we are able to bring the exact consumption to say 60 million barrels per day, meaning we've cut off 40 million barrels per day subsidy, that will be a huge saving. You do not need technical competencies. I hear the country is discussing now with, I think, a Korea company on how to track vandalism using artificial intelligence. So if we're able to deploy that, we will therefore hem in activities between the warhead and the export point. And so we can account therefore for the crude production daily. So we will make the most of the price hike. So why we do that? To make the most of the price hike, and we do what I have said, which is improve monitoring. Let me tell you what we can do. Today is a simple world. Why is it that it's impossible for every truck that truck petroleum product out from tank farms to be monitored on a dashboard? It's not rocket science. All you need to do is put a beep on all, and there's a dashboard.
And then if your own truck doesn't have beep, you're out of the business.
Once you can't find it, it's out of business. And so when it leaves Lagos, you have a real-time tracking. Oh, it is going to XY filling station in Otako. The travel time is 12 hours, for instance. So in 12 hours, the beep should show you per 30 minutes where it is. Once you do that, you will bring down whether it is going to Benin, going there, all those will stop. And once there's an infraction, you are blacklisted. Not only blacklisted, you are surcharged. Your company can be taken over by government.
You see, thank you for all these ideas, because sometimes the NNPC in particular, because we can't discuss this issue without naming names, The NNPC in particular will come out and tell us, oh, it is because the oil they got from Belgium had problem. Tomorrow they come and give us another excuse. And how much value has NNPC actually created for Nigeria and Nigerians since its inception?
That will be difficult to estimate in the face of all of the things that.
Yes, right. That's why you are here. Yes.
I think, if anything, what they have done is to institutionalize the corruption. That has been.
They are part of the local cartel responsible for what Nigerians are suffering.
The whole question of making it difficult to meter production in this country, the whole corruption around over-invoicing, of how people come in with all kind of forged receipts and they authenticate this receipt for government payments, happen with these people. Even more so because they have the latitude to spend so much and remit whatever is left to the government, rather than remit everything and justify their expenditures before they are taken out of the purse. So if there's anything that has happened, we have seen an NNPC that has aided, that has institutionalized corruption around the oil industry. So reforming that sector actually starts with reforming the NNPC, which we hope that the PIB will go some distance in trying to do. But it's a whole lot of structural issues. We have seen change of names. We have not seen change of personalities. We have not, culture. Culture, very important. And these are essential for us to move from what we think we desire. I mean, for us to move from where we are to the point where we want these companies to be adding the kind of value that they should add in this country. I mean, you were privy to a conversation earlier. We were wondering with this new mandate what the NNPC is really even doing. They are jumping into just about everything rather than concentrate on...
They are building roads, but the refineries, that is their main job, they are not doing that.
They are going into power plants.
And the Nigerians are suffering from fuel scarcity and the scarcity of many things. There's no light, and then you have to put light in fuel in gen and all that. But because we have just one more minute left, but he raised one significant issue, that the PIA, the Petroleum Industry Act, has necessitated a change of name from NNPC to NNPC Limited to show that it's now a public liability company wholly owned by the Ministry of Finance and so on, right? But there's not been a change of personnel. Can we expect to see from this moment onwards, or even from today, that whoever is going to be GMD of NNPC should be based on fully advertised applications process in which all Nigerians will follow the entire application process so that all of us can also gauge who is the best candidate to emerge rather than just choosing somebody or somebody rising through the ranks and getting there.
Thank you very much. But like you said, we're about leaving.
Okay.
In less than 12 months, within the last 12 months, for the same refineries, the comatose refineries, we were told that well over $345 million has been expended on revitalizing these refineries. And not even 1 liter had come out from 4 of them.
Serious.
And like I said, the petroleum minister is still sitting pretty and happy with the person who has this assignment. It doesn't happen in any other place except Nigeria. Whatever you think can't be that cannot happen in the world happens in Nigeria. Having said that, you are talking about hiring the chief executive of NNPC. Have you seen a Talakawa, permit my word, a Talakawa child that gets job in NNPC, either as public corporation or private corporation that he has become? If you check well, they just even may have admitted somebody into their employment today. Is that the Talakawa son? So when we get these children who were trained with stolen money in UK, US, Canada, etc., and they are warehoused back here, spoiled children, and we send them to manage our national patrimony, and we expect it to be at cutting edge, we are only putting something on nothing.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think this at that point we've got to. Sorry, I had to a bit like cutting you short, but the point is well made, and thank you very much for coming, Dr. Kasmir Efeanyi. Thank you also our business editor, Michael Sunday Ogu, for coming on the show. It's always nice to have you and your commentary and your political
It's a pleasure always.
Thank you. Thank you also, viewers, for staying with us. It is because you are there. That's why we strive to be here also for you. Hopefully tomorrow we'll bring you another edition of Daily Politics on Trust TV. Good night. I am Suleiman Suleiman.
The idea was